We must find time to stop and thank the people who make a difference in our lives. John F. Kennedy. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this week's episode. This week, as my quote alluded to, I want to talk about gratitude. And so I had some time this week to really stop and think about my own experience or journey, if you will, through my career. And I was actually chatting with my husband, and I kind of rolled through my career and where I landed and how I got there. And it really made me reflect on the people that helped me get there. And so I don't think often enough, or if even at all, that I've actually given shout outs or praise and thank yous along the way. And I know I have to some of them, and some of them I haven't. And life happens and we all move on and things like that occur. So I wanted to share that with you guys today. I wanted to share kind of my journey into property management and how I got to where I'm at today, and some of the leaders that really had an impact on my life. And I know for sure that I'm going to forget somebody. So if you're not mentioned, don't feel sad or like that it didn't matter what you gave to me, because this is being recorded live and off the cuff because it's unscripted, and I'm likely to forget something or someone. So just know that I am grateful and thankful and humbled by all of the people that have been a part of my journey in my career, in my life. And so with that being said, I wanted to start to when I first started in property management. And I was young and I started in the conventional world. I worked for Fogelman Properties out of Atlanta. They are much bigger now. And I had a property manager named Ann Jarrell. And Ann hired me as a leasing agent, and I started my career with her. And I met one of my very best friends, Angela Teams, during that time. And we're still friends, great friends today. And I, really took on that leasing role, and I learned a lot about the industry and grew from her taking a chance on me. And so I really appreciate that. I have no idea where Ann Jarrell is today. We don't talk, we haven't kept in touch, but hopefully she's out there killing it still and doing her thing and empowering others like she empowered me. So when I left Fogelman, I actually went to Lincoln, and I went to Lincoln, and Debbie Parada took a chance on me. And I also met a lady that I'm really good friends with still, named Stephanie. McCusker is her last name now, and her and I still stay in touch. And Debbie took a chance on me. I was a leasing agent. Stephanie was the assistant manager. Debbie was a great leader, and she went out on maternity leave while Stephanie and I were there. And so Stephanie and I were kind of left to man the front and take care of everything while Debbie was on her maternity leave. And so when we did that, we got a lot of experiences, and we still laugh about them today. Some were really quite comical, to be honest with you, and just had a really great opportunity with a really large organization to learn from a lot of people. I also had a regional manager during that time. And while Debbie was out on maternity leave, her name was Mary Cook Detweiler. And I, again, don't stay in touch with her, but she did have an impact on me. And I have a funny story about some potential bank robbers. And I was so young, and the FBI came to the office, and I was ready to go get some bad guys until we knocked on the door and the bad guys answered. All was well and safe, and they were apprehended, and nothing bad happened. But I will never forget my calling Mary Cook Detweiler and saying, "Oh my gosh, this is what just happened." And she was like so mad that the FBI took me there with them so they could gain access to this unit, so they could apprehend these bank robbers. And I will never forget that. That experience taught me so much, and it taught me a lot about myself. And I'm always going to be the person that's like, let's go get the bad guys, or let's go conquer this or knock this out, without stopping to think about what happens when and if you are successful in doing that. And so I really learned from that experience with her. When I did leave Lincoln, I went to Miles, and like I said earlier, Randy Haft Donovan, she brought me in and taught me the training piece of things. And I had a really great experience with Miles Properties. They were based out of Atlanta. I had a regional when I left the training role and moved into a more area manager role. I had a regional manager named Bud Phillips, and I stayed in touch with Bud for many, many years. And I haven't gotten contact with him in a while, but he took a chance on me, and he was very patient, and he was very kind, and he taught me, how to be a good area manager and how to manage, best use my talents to create success for the communities that we served. When I left Miles, I had been transferred out to Texas. Miles had brought on a couple of assets that were major renovations, and it was in the multifamily sector, and it was a lot of hard work, and it was a very valuable and impactful time in my career. But we were in Texas, and my husband didn't find work there. I was working so many hours that he was really doing Mr. Mom duties and taking care of the household because I was pouring myself into my career. And so we made the decision as a family to move back to Georgia. And so when I went to look for another job in Atlanta and come into Georgia, that's when I dipped my toes in the student housing sector. And when I did that, I met a lady named Rhonda Cochran now. And Rhonda is known in the industry. She's been around for a long time, and we're still contacted and connected on LinkedIn, and probably don't talk as often as we should, but nonetheless, she is the person that I owe my student housing career to, because she took a chance on me and hired me to come to Athens, Georgia, and start my student housing career. And I was enamored and I don't know if it's wowed or fascinated is the better word, by the student housing realm, because coming from the conventional sector, which is much slower paced, for me, conventional is like watching paint dry on the wall. Compared to student, I was fascinated by the fact that all these students, whether your property's 500 beds, 800 beds, 1,400 beds, they all move out on one day, and you process all of those move outs and all of those final account statements. And then in a mere 14 days later, you move that many kids back in, minus some renewals, of course. But Rhonda really taught me the industry, and I owe my student housing career entry to her and her taking that risk and being willing to show me. She taught me the turn board, and she taught me the lingo, and she taught me, how to be the best student housing operator I could be at that time, and really introduced me to it. She ended up leaving the organization and going to work somewhere else. And the owners of the group that owned the asset that I worked at ended up selling their properties. And so they had subdivisions and other, ventures that they were doing with different parties. And so they ended up selling the assets. And when that occurred, I found myself looking again for, another student housing role. And I ended up moving over to Asset Campus, and I moved my family to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and went to work on an asset there for Asset Campus. And I was there for a couple of years, met some really great individuals. And, at the same time, when I was interviewing for the Murfreesboro, Tennessee at a position, I interviewed for a position in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I didn't get the position in Knoxville, Tennessee, but I met a gentleman named Brad Brown and a gentleman named Nate Rivard. And so, for some reason, Nate and Brad and I, really just kind of stayed in touch. And so over the course of the 2 years that I was in Murfreesboro, I, still had conversation and chatted with Brad just to check in and see how things were going. And so once the asset in Murfreesboro stabilized and was no longer a challenge, because I've been a fixer my whole life, I'm like, give me a mess and let me fix it. I really was able to, Brad called me and said, hey, I have a position in Louisville, Kentucky. And I would really love for you to, for us to talk and let's see if that's something that you're interested in. So, I went to meet with Brad in Knoxville, ironically. And so he said, look, we're not ready for the Louisville office to be open just yet because the property is under construction and we don't have our trailer to rent out of and all of those things, but come to Knoxville and help us because we're struggling a little bit. And so I happily went over to Knoxville for a couple of months and spent some time there. And when it came time, it was like a 90-day window. When it came time for me to move to Louisville and start that lease up there, we the company ended up making a change with the manager that was at the Knoxville property at that time. And I had spent that summer bonding with that team and really learning that market. And I just really kind of fell in love with Knoxville, Tennessee. And so I took that chance with Brad and Nate. And I love to talk about Brad and Nate because, they emanate excellence. Like, some of the things that they taught me are so invaluable. And they're silly things, maybe sounding to some, but there's some of the things that make the biggest impact and difference. And namely, it would be attention to detail. And so, I owe a lot of my attention to detail and a lot of my thoughts that surround turn and move in and the resident experience as a whole. I owe it to them. I think they taught me a lot. They taught me a lot about, asset upkeep and the expectation and why the importance that your grass is green or that your handrails are clean or, all of those other things. And so I'm super grateful and will forever be grateful to them for that experience and that opportunity. I also kind of became the farm for that company and grew a lot of individuals. And I met a lot of really awesome people that are still friends of mine in this career during that time. After I left, it was with Edwards Student Housing that I was with Brad and Nate. I went to work for Peak Campus. And when I went to work for Peak Campus, I happened to get a call from a headhunter and took the call and really wanted to be able to move up. And with Edwards, there wasn't that upward mobility. And I was really looking to climb the ladder. I was very to do that. And so I met a lady that is named Lori Stanley. And Lori still works with Peak today. And Lori and I just hit it off. We're both sales and marketing type girls, and we love that piece of our business. We're both strong operators. And so I found myself moving my family again to Greensboro, North Carolina. And it just so happened that during that time when that headhunter called, it was in the winter, and my husband's family's from North Carolina, and we happened to be going there for the holidays. And so it worked out that we could take a little detour through Greensboro on our way, check out the asset, meet Lori, and, see where things went. And so one thing led to another, and I started my career with Peak Campus. I remember that Mandy Elmore, who is also a very impactful person in my life, that she came and did my drug test. She was on maternity leave. And so it was a mouth swab, and she came by my current work because she lives in Knoxville, and she did the drug test then. And that was when I had first met her. And so I went to Greensboro, North Carolina to work for Lori Stanley. And we both are super passionate about sales and leasing and marketing. And I learned a lot from her. Lori and I have a longer history as far as knowing one another, but I really worked for her on that asset for right at a year. And we were able to successfully lease that asset up and do a lot of really fun and cool things. And the thing that I love and that I learned about from Lori Stanley is that, if you want to set the bar here, she sets the bar higher. And it drove me nuts when I was younger and I was in that role because I was like, oh my gosh, this woman wants everything. And what can we do? And are we going to be able to, make what she wants us to make and create and be successful in the manner that she wants us to? And, she always hits it home. She always hits it home because she does. She raises, even if you don't reach that bar, you still hit the goal that you've got to hit. And so I've carried that with me. And I don't think I've told her thank you or expressed gratitude for her and the impact that she's had on my career and in my lifetime. But thank you, Lori. I carry it with me now. And so I am appreciative of that. When I was with Peak, I, again, like I said, was really looking for upward mobility and growth and a company that really grew their team from within. And Peak was experiencing a lot of growth. And so I had the opportunity to become a national operations specialist under Holly Reinhardt Golubiowski. And she was on the podcast a few weeks back. And she's doing a coach. She's an executive coach, and I still talk to her, and I'm talking to her this afternoon. And so I learned a lot in that experience. And to date, that's one of my favorite roles that I ever had was, that NOPS position where I was able to fly to different assets throughout the country. So as I was saying, I went to work for Holly and was in the NOPS role and really thoroughly enjoyed that role and learned quite a bit from that. After that, I was promoted and worked under Mandy Elmore as a regional. And I learned so much from Mandy. I mean, I could spend an entire episode talking about that. But thank you, Mandy, for taking that chance on me as an RM. And thank you to Holly for taking the opportunity and the chance on me as an ops employee, because the things I learned at Peak Campus were really invaluable to my career as a whole and to my personal being. And I'm just super thankful and grateful for those experiences that I was able to have. When I left Peak, I did take a short stint over to work for a company out of New York for a gentleman there. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that I learned a lot there. It was not an ideal situation by any means, but nonetheless, there were takeaways. And so I am thankful for each step of my path and journey into where I'm at now. And I don't think without all of those people along the way, and many others that I didn't mention, that I'd be where I am today. And so I really wanted to take the time and talk about gratitude and talk about thanking the people who make a difference in our lives. And this one is focused on my career and my journey in my career path. There are tons of people who have made an impact and a difference in my life personally, and that's for another day and time. But I'm going to end this episode with a quote. And basically it's, when it comes to life, the critical thing is whether you take things for granted or you take them with gratitude. And I'm opting for gratitude, and I encourage each of you to do so as well. Thank you guys for joining, and I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Take care. Hey guys, if you like this episode, please hit like and subscribe.